Headlines: Federal government to borrow 11 trillion naira, spend 3.36 trillion naira on subsidy. Navy thwarts NNPC's claim of 200,000 barrels of crude oil theft daily. Oil workers urge federal government to enlighten Nigerians on impact of subsidy removal. Hello and welcome to Valuechain News. I am Naomi Olewibe. Ahead of the 2023 budget presentation, the federal government yesterday insisted that petroleum subsidy will remain in place until mid-2023. In addition, the government will borrow over 11 trillion naira and sell national assets to finance budget deficits next year. The government is proposing an aggregate expenditure of 19.76 trillion naira for the 2023 financial year, a 15.37% increase from the amount earmarked in the 2022 budget, with a projected deficit of 11.30 trillion naira, 54% higher than the previous budget's estimated deficit. This was disclosed by the Minister of Finance and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, while appearing before the House of Representatives Committee on Finance in Abuja to defend the 2023-2025 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. She said the government budget deficit is expected to exceed 12.42 trillion naira if it should keep petroleum subsidy for the entire 2023 fiscal cycle. According to the minister, the government is proposing to spend only 3.36 trillion naira for petrol subsidy in 2023 based on the 18-month extension announced early this year. Against the backdrop of recent figures of missing and stolen crude oil put at 200,000 barrels daily by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awal Gambo, on Monday night disclosed that it is practically impossible for such quantity of crude to be stolen daily, given the deployment of Nigerian Navy ships and other operational platforms spread across the nation's maritime domain. In an interview with Channels TV, Vice Admiral Awal Gambo clarified that the data may not have emanated from oil theft alone, noting that the government agencies were mistakenly attributing losses due to force majeures and shut-ins as part of stolen crude oil. Explaining further, the Vice Admiral said oil losses could be as a result of metering errors on the operating platforms, while the volume of crude oil shut-ins from non-production are often added to oil theft data instead of accounting for them as oil losses by the authorities. Nigerians have in recent times interrogated the reports of huge crude oil thefts in the nation's maritime domain and wondered if the Navy were complicit in the oil thefts, which has made it difficult for the country to produce the 65% of its allocation by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. The naval chief, while maintaining that efforts have been intensified to prevent crude oil thefts, noted that in the last 4 weeks, the Navy has detected a number of vessels attempting to load crude and liquefied natural gas within offshore terminals without necessary documentation and approval from relevant authorities like the NNPC. President of Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengasson, Comrade Festus Osifo, has implored the federal government to tell Nigerians what they would gain from the planned removal of fuel subsidy. He spoke during a panel session at the Association of Energy Correspondents of Nigeria, NAEC Strategic International Conference in Lagos, where he hinted that Nigerians are more concerned with the positive impacts which the removal of fuel subsidy will bring to them socially and economically. Osifo added that Nigerians are only concerned with reliable and affordable energy, not energy transition, which countries across the world have been drawing timetables for its execution. The government must demonstrate that if subsidy must go, this must reflect in our education, it must reflect in our healthcare and also our level of infrastructure. So the trust deficits that Nigerians have must be addressed before we can make any progress, he stated. In Russia now, 6 months into Russia's war in Ukraine, Russia's oil output has continued to exceed expectations, although experts are warning that Moscow will find it increasingly difficult to uphold production as Western sanctions begin to bite. According to the latest reports by the International Energy Agency, IEA, the country's crude and oil product flows to the US, UK, the EU, Japan and Korea have slumped by nearly 2.2 million barrels per day since the outbreak of the war, two-thirds of which has been rerouted to other markets. Export revenues fell from $21 billion in June to $19 billion in July on both reduced volumes and lower oil prices. Exports to India have been able to make up for much of the reduced flows to Western nations. New reports have emerged that during the second quarter, India slashed its crude imports from the United States by 1 million metric tons, while sharply ramping up imports of discounted Russian oil. India's energy mix now looks dramatically different from a year ago. Last year, Russian oil in India's crude basket amounted to a paltry 2.2%, while the US was 9.2%. Right now, Russia accounts for nearly 12.9% of India's crude imports, while the US share has tumbled to just 5.4%. India has never been a big buyer of Russian crude, despite having to import 80% of its needs. In a typical year, India imports just 2 to 5% of its crude from Russia, roughly the same proportion as the United States did before it announced a 100% ban on Russian energy commodities. India imported only 12 million barrels of Russian crude in 2021, with the most of its oil sourced from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Nigeria. The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, NIDCOM, on Monday lauded diaspora contributions to Nigeria's economy as diaspora remittances increased by 20.3% in the first quarter of 2022. NIDCOM chairman Mrs. Abike Dabiri Erewa gave the commendation in a statement issued by Alhaji Abdul Rahman Balogun, head of his media public relations and protocol unit of the commission. Recent figures released by the CBN showed an increase in remittances in Q1 of 2022 to $5.16 billion from $4.29 billion in the corresponding period of 2021. NIDCOM will continue to push for more engagement with our diaspora, who are an indisputable economic factor and are becoming an investment factor in the country. Also, many Nigerians abroad are investing in agriculture, real estate, health, education, ICT, amongst others. It is expected that by the end of 2022, remittances from Nigerians in the diaspora from official sources would have increased from its current $22 billion to about $25 billion. She said the increased remittances played a significant role in Nigeria's GDP and had a great impact on the country's socio-economic growth. And now, let's have a quick look at oil prices and exchange rates today. And that's the oil prices and exchange rates today. Ensure to follow us on all our social media platforms via Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our official YouTube handle to gain first access to all our news and content. And that's all for the news today. I am Naomi Valeribe. Thank you for watching. Good afternoon.